call came in of a prowler at 5400 Blodgett. And the weather that night, it was 5 degrees. Just about the time I was approaching the parkway at an angle to the house, again, it's like 5 degrees out, and I see a lady come out the back door in a pink nightgown. And so this is odd. Why is a lady out in this weather? And she wasn't walking quick. I can remember that. So, again, drew my service weapon, and I got behind a tree there, and I go, ma'am, it's the police department. I'm over here. And she had just made it to the front of the house, and a gunshot went off. And she screamed and went down. Not too long after that was the Rodney King era, and in the early 90s. And get a call down to Venture Department Store, which was like Target is now. And it's a disturbance near the entrance inside the store. And there's 2 females giving a lady who's pregnant and has an infant child with her a hard time. And they're screaming and yelling. So we get there and we're trying to separate them and deal with them. And it's going nowhere. They're obnoxious, they're loud, they're swearing at us. It's a bunch of racial stuff going back and forth, and just got the sense of something's not right here. This is a setup of some sort. This is contrived. Felt very contrived. So we're trying to settle that down. We had a couple of cars coming with. We called them off. So me and Billy Byrne were there. God rest his soul. I think we got it under control. Mail server comes through the double doors, goes right up to the lady who's holding baby and shoves her. So I go to grab him like, oh man, what the hell is this going now? And he's obviously with these 2. He kicks me in the groin. And so I go down like a sack of potatoes, and then Bill grabs them, and they're now on the floor inside the store by the magnetometers at the first entrance doors and shopping cart area. It's a busy evening, 7 o'clock at night. And I get up as best I can and go over to Bill, and we're trying to get this guy off of Bill. I'm trying to get this guy off of Bill, and Bill's screaming. He's going for my gun. He's going for my gun. He's taking my gun out of the holster, and he scratched at that moment with his fingernails Bill's face down here to the point of basically engraving his face. And I just couldn't. I didn't have strength, and completely winded from being kicked. And the store loss prevention guy, God bless him, came in and did a big knee drop down on this guy, and he just jack in a box off of Billy. Thank goodness. And in the meantime, I had called the code 1078, get some cars down here. We're now on the shit. And when the guy he went up, I grabbed his legs, and he came down. And that particular day was my first day wearing contacts. And I thought I had my glasses on. And when he came down on top of my head, I thought, oh shit, he broke my glasses, this motherfucker, all right? And so that was, I don't know, the stupid stuff you think of. And I'm trying to just hold his legs as best I can so he goes nowhere, and he's punching my head. And I see Dave Billish pull up in front, and he gets out of the car, and he comes screaming through, and he does a knee drop on this guy with me below him, right? So we sort this whole thing out, find out this guy's high on PCP. It was an all setup thing to try and do a lawsuit with us because of the whole Rodney King thing. And, and I don't think a lot of people understand how much those events that happen around the country do have an effect everywhere because of modern media. And that was definitely an effect from that. They made a point of telling us they wanted to get a lawsuit for police brutality of some sort from that. Right around that time, working the afternoon shift, quiet Sunday night, get a call of a domestic. And I'm always a couple blocks away. I get there, and the screen door is closed, but the front door is open, and you can hear the screaming and yelling in there. But the interior of the house is dark. My backup gets there, Tim Dutton. We make entry into the house as quiet as we can because we hear they're upstairs. So we're searching the first floor, we're clearing that. We get to the kitchen, and the knives from the knife block are now on the floor of the kitchen, and they're broken. So like the steak knives and some of the smaller carving knives are broken on the floor. And Tim goes, "Dave, get a hold of this. This ain't good, you know." So we make our way to go upstairs, and there's a set of stairs goes up to a landing, to another set of stairs up to a landing that divides the bedrooms. So there's a landing dividing the master bedroom from some other bedrooms over here. On the top stair, that top stairway. So I come around the corner, I got my pistol in my hand, and there's a guy sitting on the top stair in a t-shirt and boxer shorts, and he has impaled in his chest the butcher knife, which, you know, like it's from the block downstairs, in his chest, all the way to the hilt. And behind him are his teenage daughter screaming, hysterical, and his wife, whose face was pumpkined out to here. And the only conclusion I could draw in the moment was she plugged him, and he beat the shit out of her, and she threw a knife in him, you know. And I was getting worried she's going to do something else because she's walking right behind him, pacing back and forth, and they're swearing at each other. So I trained my pistol on her. I'm like, "Lady, get away from him. Mister, we're going to get you some help." Girls go in the room. It's chaotic, you know. And meanwhile, Tim, I could tell, is on the radio getting cavalry there. And he goes, "Fuck you." And I'm like, yeah, we're going to get you to the hospital. He goes, "I'm not going to a fucking hospital." I'm like, "We're going to take you to the hospital. Man, get away from him, right?" And I'm thinking, I'm going to shoot this lady any second now. And the guy goes, "I can't even fucking kill myself right." And I remember going, "What?" And it was like a comedy almost. Going, "Did you what?" He goes, "I did this, you didn't do this, I can't even fucking kill myself right." And he's sitting there just like this with a knife in his chest. And then very little blood coming out. So I'm like, "Did he just say that?" And Tim goes, "What the fuck?" Right? We go, "Okay, all right." So now starts the process of we got to get this settled down here. We're hysterical up there, and that lady's now injured. We got to get help for her. Lonnie Rogers shows up. Lonnie had this great ability to communicate with the average guy. Just a great communicator with people, good people person. And we're all on this landing because he goes, "You guys don't come any closer, I'm going to twist the knife." That's all he kept saying. "You come any closer, I'm twisting the knife." I go, "We're going to get you to the hospital." He goes, "I'm not going to the fucking hospital." And that went on for 10 minutes. So down the bottom of the first floors, you know, the sergeant, 2 other officers, and the entire fire department shows up. They're all down there waiting to do their thing. And Lonnie's talking to this guy, and he finally convinces him to move aside so we can get the girls and your wife out, right? And he does. So that was a tense second there, at least when she was going by him, going, he's going to do something, right? And now what do? Right? He's got a knife in his chest. He lets her go by, and now he won't move. That went on, felt like forever. And Lonnie convinced him to come down to the landing, but the guy wanted to have a cigarette. I go, "This is surreal. The guy's got a knife in his chest and he wants to have a smoke, right?" So we get him down to the landing, and it's Lonnie, myself, the guy. I remember Dean Kelmer, the sergeant, was with us, and they're trying to talk this guy into going to the hospital. And he goes, "Well, one more cigarette and I'll go." So he does get the cot or some sort of board up on this landing. It was big enough to get that up there. And he gets on it, and the fight's on now. He goes for the knife. He starts trying to twist it. So we're fighting this guy so he doesn't kill himself in our presence, you know. And you just, what the actual? And then you come to find out that they were going through divorce. The court ordered him to stay in the house. He wanted to have sex with her. Of course, naturally, she didn't want to. She's divorcing the guy. And he beat her face with a table lamp. And then he went down in the kitchen, feeling guilty about what he just did to his soon-to-be ex-wife, and started jamming knives into his chest. And he was breaking them as he was doing it. And he succeeded with the one and went upstairs to show her. And that's when we showed up. And you know, the things people do is just, it's crazy in that regard.
So, and maybe you've already answered this because you did talk about a couple of incidents where you're like, something's not right here. You know, the knives on the floor, the argument inside a venture. Mm-hmm. Has there ever been an instance where you show up and you're like, something's not right here. I don't have a good feeling about this.
The hair on the back of your neck's just talking to you. Yeah. You know, in April of 1999, I was field training, a guy named Nick Curcio. Real good policeman. He was a transfer from another department, and we were basically a two-man car. It was just, Nick's more than a capable police officer at that time. As a matter of fact, I was ready to go. He doesn't need me, it's just more procedural stuff for the policy. And we're heading to go get lunch about 10 to 6. And it's a Tuesday. And I'm going to back up a little bit because we cleared roll call. Nick and I got assigned to go over to 928 Maple to assist a day shift car that was having trouble with a guy he was up in you're trying to get a statement from the guy for a disorderly conduct report, and the guy was yelling at him. He just wanted another car to come over. So Nick and I got the assignment. We went over. And this guy's up there in the second floor, just too flat, and he doesn't want to come down. He's MFing us, and and I was like, "Do you need him?" And Jimmy goes, "No." So we just made arrangements for him to come to the station. We just cleared the scene and left. Fast forward to 10 to 6. Nick and I are right exactly because I'm in the left turn lane on Highland, ready to turn onto Butterfield Road, and the radio goes, "We have a report of a home invasion in progress, 928 Maple." All right. Complainants of 8-month pregnant woman getting forced out of her first floor unit by the tenant upstairs with a shotgun. Like, holy shit, back to that guy. And I had a feeling, right? Turn around, start going. And it's rush hour on a Tuesday in April, and traffic jammed. I mean, it's just, there's no way around it. I mean, Downers Grove has a population of around 48,000 people, but during the day we're close to 200,000. And rush hour, it's every bit of that. And trying to get from one end of town, this is a challenge even when you're running with lights and siren. So I remember going, and as we're rolling down there, you hear the radio going, I'm showing up, dispatch telling how they got her to get out of the house and she's leaving, and another officer pulled up, grabbed her, got her out of the area. First guys on the scene are going, he's breaking windows out of the unit. And this is going to turn shitty, Nick. This doesn't sound like this is going to go well. We're going to go down Washington. We're parking in the northeast corner. So I come on Washington. There's an apartment building there. I park the car there. We take up a position northeast corner where I got a view on it. I grabbed the rifle because I think we're going to need this. So I took the rifle with me. It was an AR-15, kind of new to us. It was we hadn't had him in the car very long, and I said, I think this is going to be a problem. We weren't in that position for longer than 5 minutes, and the lieutenant of the shift goes, "I need Franklin up here for negotiations. Get up here." So I left Nick there, and I took a route on what was becoming the outside perimeter. Around to where they started establishing a close-in inside perimeter of the building next door at 932, which is 25 feet from the door of the other place. And on the way there, I pass Jim Edwards, and I hand him my AR. I go, "Take this way." I go, "Okay." I go, "It's charged." Tell him the condition it's in. I go, "Get up there." And this guy's breaking out every window of the entire building and screaming his mind off. And so I go, "Okay, how am I going to establish communication with this guy?" I mean, he's not going to just go, "Oh, hi, you're here." And so I'm like, Greg, it's Dave. Do you remember me?" And he stopped. He goes, "Yeah." I go, "I was here earlier." I go, "What's wrong, man? What's got you upset?" So that starts a bit of a dialogue with him and I. I says, "Can I call you?" Because, we're doing this whole yelling across thing, and there's commuters everywhere. They're trying to get the scene locked down, but they're still, we have a major train station in town that brings commuters from the city of Chicago. When a train comes in at 6 o'clock, drops off 500 to 1,000 people at one time. And so you have all that going on. It's a complete cluster. And so I call him up. And he's just going off his rocker about the earlier interaction with our officer, because there was an incident on Ogden Avenue that he thought the FBI and the Mafia were following him, and he was ticked off about that. A little background on Greg is that for a couple of weeks leading up to this incident, we were getting various reports where he was going into businesses and doing oddball stuff, and people were calling us about it. Even in Naperville, they had the same thing. And so he was kind of like a little bit on our radar. And now trying to establish an ongoing communication with him, going, this isn't good. He's brandishing a rifle, and then he's brandishing a shotgun. So now I know he's got multiple weapons. That's not one. And he starts screaming about how he has explosives in there. He's going to blow the house up. And I'm like, okay, there's no need, I'm trying to do the whole negotiator thing. It's my very first one after being trained, right? So I got thrown right into the fire. And I hear they activate the SWAT team. So I'm going, my brain's doing the whole thing. That's 50 minutes to an hour before they're on scene and they're situated and they're ready to roll, right? So this is ours until then. And I got to do everything I can to keep him contained in that building and not escalate it further beyond what it is, so we can get patrol units in here. And, that's our goal. And then I got the lieutenant and the sergeant with me, and we're all kind of talking about where we want to go with this, while I'm trying to keep him talking to me, because every time I start a sentence with him, he starts screaming and yelling, walks away from the phone, comes back. This goes on and on and on. SWAT team arrives. All my guys get there, we get situated, and still on the phone with them, and it's the longest hour. You're trying to talk about all these different things to keep him preoccupied, and it becomes impossible when there's mental health going on here. And at one point he says, I need you to move your guys back. You're inside my perimeter. I need a 500-foot perimeter. And I'm like, okay. And he pops out of a hatch in the roof that, if you think skylight, but it was just a covering of a skylight. He opened that thing up and popped out with the rifle, and he had a backpack on. And when he came out, I could see wires going down to his left hand. He's wired himself. It's the only conclusion you can draw in a moment. And he's screaming and yelling and ranting and raving, comes back in, gets back on the phone, says, I need this perimeter at 500 feet. I can see your guys in my perimeter. I'm going to shoot them. I go, what guy are you talking about? He goes, that guy in the gray pinstripe suit. We're talking to the guy with the mustache. And I look out and I see one of our uniform guys, and I'm pretty sure it was the chief of police he was talking to, and I could see him out there. And I go, how do you know he's got a pinstripe suit? He goes, I have this beautiful Bushnell scope on this. He goes, so tell him to move the fuck back, Dave. And I'm like, okay, well, again, not the sharpest tool in the shed move by Dave. I'm at the corner of this building, and I peek my head out over the top of one of the TAC guys because I'm an idiot, and I'm looking at the house, and now all I see is glass, and he's got the rifle pointed right at the corner at me. And I jump back, and I start swearing at him, going, Greg, you fucking point a rifle at me? I've been nothing but good to you. Look, I treat you nice, all this sort of thing. I go, throw that goddamn rifle out before somebody gets hurt. And he does. He threw the rifle out the window into the backyard. And I go, huh. Well, Mike Willison's standing behind me. And Mike, if you see Dick Butkus, you see Dick Butkus' twin. And Mike's got a rather deep voice, and he goes, hey, have him throw out another one. So now we're all kind of chuckling there in the moment, going, yeah, I wish it was that easy, right? And my partner at the time was Bob Porter, and he showed up, and so I did a transition with him. And we're sitting in a car right there next to the building, and our phone started failing. This is early technology on cell phones, and it was time to we got to get onto a landline. They've established a command post across the street in a Park District building, and it's getting hard to get intel to us because of where we're at, because we're so close on the inside perimeter. And we've got to now keep him on the phone and preoccupied and get over to the command center and spin up our negotiation center. And it was hard. This thing is becoming pretty chaotic because now the county's on scene backing us up. And I'm on the phone with him, and I'm passing to Bob, and he starts throwing up. And I tell Bob, hang on a second. What's wrong? You're throwing up. He goes, I went fishing today, and I started eating a fish. I go, what's wrong with it? He goes, I didn't cook it. I go, you're eating a fish? And I'm like, oh, this is what we're dealing with. I don't know how we're going to get through to this guy. And it's still, the whole time, this isn't going to end well. I don't see how we're going to have an ending here that's going to be good. He's not comprehending things we're discussing, right? Everything is going off the rails. Every sentence is just changing directions. And it's not a fluid conversation back and forth like we're having a thing about, him fishing. 1 minute he's fishing, then he's got the mafia after him. So it was complete scatter. We established the command post over there, and bomb squad shows up. So we're in this command post and the NOC, which is the Negotiations Operations Center, and we're got our thing going. It's myself, it's Bob, bomb guy, and our lieutenant. And I'm on the phone with him now. And he goes, hang on a minute, Dave. And he goes away, and I go, we got him to the point where just put the phone down. And I could hear What sounded to me was wire being pulled through a conduit, right? I hear this whooshing sound, like wire being pulled through a metal conduit. And I tell Bond guy, I don't know what that is. He's doing something. Oh, boy, he's sawing off his shotguns, and we learned that later. But that's the sound we're hearing. I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together. So finally get to the point where we actually calmed him down. He's calmed down to enough where we think he's going to come out. And so I'm like, Greg, listen, we're waiting for you. We're going to get some pizza. We'll sit down. We'll talk about everything. We'll get it all squared away. You get a good night's sleep, kind of thing. He goes, okay, Dave. You did really good, Dave. All right, take care, Dave. And I go, just put the phone down. And I could hear him going. I hear him going downstairs. I hear a door open. And I know exactly how my TAC React team is sitting, where we were negotiating earlier. And I know they have a sniper blind set up and all inside perimeter stuff. And okay. And I hear rustling over the radio. And then one of the guys goes, he's running northbound. And then we hear a shot followed by 3 quick ones. And I go, they just hit him. I go, they just shot him. It sounded like an MP5 went off, the 3 shots of an MP5. And he shot at them, and they returned fire on him, son of a bitch. And Bob punched the cabinet, put a hole in it, because we just had a failure. And you start worrying about guys. And then we hear, we got an officer down. And officer hit. When you're in a small or medium-sized department, you know everybody. You see them every day, all the time. And when you hear that, you don't know who it is, you don't know the circumstances, man, it hits you hard. It comes home in a hurry. So before we can even process that, one of the TAC guys goes, we need negotiators up here. And evidently they had him down. He was down in a backyard over there. And they had an L-shaped position set up on him. And they go, talk to him. He's not talking. He's laying on the ground with a fireman's bunker coat on and a backpack over that. Wires going down to his thing. And he's got his shotgun and shells from a pocket, shotgun shells that spilled onto the grass. But he's laying there. And of course, I don't know what transpired back here. All I know is he's down, he's been shot. And I go, Greg, you all right? Want to talk to you? What's up? He goes, fuck you, Franklin, and he dies. Well, we don't know he dies, but he learned later that's when he died. And so they don't know what to do. They know what to do. They just, what's our next course of action? So they decide to throw 2 concussion diversionary devices on them to draw a reaction so they can run in and cuff them up. And that's what they did and resolved the issue. And what happens when he ran northbound, during the whole time negotiating with him, he was planning his escape. And he had gone underneath the back porch and cut a hole that none of us saw him doing to get out where we wouldn't see him. And the door we thought he was coming out, he didn't. He came out the other side, ran, all camouflaged up, right over the top of our sniper, right, who was laying in a ghillie suit, right over him. And he hit the first layer of our perimeter. And when our guy backed up, he turned, and Jimmy was backing up to avoid him, discharged around into the cement, and that fragmented into the guy that was with him. And Jim, falling midair, shot him again. And that's the shots that put him down. And the third round went into the house. But anyways, that was that moment where you go, none of us had ever experienced anything that tense, that quickly, in that kind of period of time. It changed everything for us. It was at the same time that the Bank of America shootout happened in LA. It was the same day that Columbine happened. So much in law enforcement and our agency changed tactically, the way we approach things, training-wise. That period of time between the Bank of America thing, Columbine, and our own incident changed everything in how we did stuff to a whole nother level. Our innocence was gone, that day. And, my friend Jim, who unfortunately had to take the shot, him and I pray for that kid every chance we get. And it wasn't his fault that he was mentally ill. It was his fault. It wasn't his fault that nobody took care of him. I remember being in the command post and his mother was there, and I approached her to ask, can you tell me something about your son? She goes, yeah, he has mental illness. He had this wall fall on him one time. He's had brain damage since, and he sees this psychologist over here and a therapist here. I go, give me his number. She was less than cooperative, but enough that I got the number out of her. And I called this doctor up at Good Sam. We're in the middle of this whole thing. I says, I'm with your patient, or I'm not with him, but we're trying to negotiate. I'm trying to explain the situation. He goes, well, you guys just have to deal with it. I don't deal with people in crisis. I go, Doc, I need you to come down here and give me some steps and, maybe over my shoulder, tell me what to do. He goes, that's not what we do. I'm like, well, you're useless. I don't know, why didn't bother? And, some of that's changed over time, but I remember going, you just left us out here to figure this out. And I'm going, I went to college for a couple of years, it's it. I'm a high school graduate. I go, and I've got to figure this out. I've had training, yes, a couple weeks worth. And now I got to figure out a guy who's completely mentally unstable with bipolar, paranoid schizophrenia, and I got to figure this out, all right? And thanks, Doc. So we're discussing, things that go, something's not right here, that something's off. And you get on those calls. And in March of 1988, I got assigned. We were working midnight shift. There's only 4 of us working that particular night with a sergeant and then a lieutenant actually was working too, so 6 total in the town working. And around 2:30 that night, a call came in of a prowler at 5400 Blodgett. And the weather that night, it was 5 degrees. But it was kind of a slow night, so we wore leather jackets back in the day. They were kind of cumbersome. So I didn't have it on. I had it on the seat next to me. And so I rolled over on the call, and I got there first. And passed the house up, parked the car, I got out, put my jacket on, trying to assess going, I don't see anybody. And when it's that cold out, you can hear things, especially if the snow's on the ground, forever. One of the techniques I always employed in cold weather was at night like that, turn the engine off, drop the windows, and just listen. You could hear people talking a block away. You could hear snow crunch, gates closed, so on and so forth. So that was kind of a really quiet scene. And this house is a driveway all along the one side with a detached garage, a front porch at the front of the house leading to the driveway. So I got myself situated, and just about the time I was approaching the parkway at an angle to the house, again, it's like 5 degrees out, and I see a lady come out the back door in a pink nightgown, a negligee actually. I mean, next to nothing. And right away, well, this is weird, right? It's got to be our caller. And, okay. And she's walking between, there's 2 cars in the driveway, between the 2 cars and the house leading to the front porch. And so this is odd. Why is a lady out in this weather? And she wasn't walking quick. I can remember that. So, again, drew my service weapon, and I got behind a tree there, and I go, ma'am, it's the police department. I'm over here. And she had just made it to the front of the house, and a gunshot went off. And she screamed and went down in the driveway between the car and the house. And I went to a knee, and holy shit, this guy just shot her, right? And got on the radio, I got shots fired over here, she's down. And I'm like, he knows I'm here, son of a bitch. He knows where I'm at. And I'm looking going, I don't see nothing. And I know, well, you had your gun in your hand, was it you? So I dropped the magazine on my pistol, it wasn't me. Redid it, and I go, I'm in a bad spot here. And I moved myself to the engine part of my car in the street to get a bigger view of the area. Going, if he runs somewhere, I can at least try and see him. Because I felt constricted by the tree. It's a pretty large oak tree. So I'm there, and anybody who's been on critical incidents knows, 1 minute could feel like 5 days. And this was no different. But super quiet out, and I could hear the guys coming. And Kurt Heinrich was coming, and he didn't have his siren on, but I could hear his engine. He was hauling ass. And the particular street we're on is a little bit of a rise behind me where I was at. So in front of my car is facing where he was coming at, and she hasn't moved. She's down. And he comes over the rise in his car, and as he gets to my car, he put his car into a slide, so he was like this against, at an angle in my car. And he got out with a shotgun and racked it, and went over the hood and turned to me and goes, "What's going on, Dave?" As cool as like it was a movie scene. And I go, "You didn't just do that." You know what I mean? That's my brain. I didn't say it. I was too hyped up, but well, that really brought me down. My temperature went down. Like, okay, collect yourself, okay? And I go, "She's down, shot fired. I don't know where he's at. He's here somewhere. She hit that front by the stairs, shot went off, she went down. That's all I know." So cavalry gets there, we set up a perimeter. She still hasn't moved, no sign of this guy here. They decide to send 2 guys up to extract her, to bring her down to an ambulance. When they get up there, laying next to her is a .38 revolver, right? And they get her out of there. There's no guy. Long story short, go into the house now. There's 2 kids sleeping in the house. There's bullet holes all over the house. She had been shooting rounds in the house, rounds in the neighbor's house. Learned later she's all hyped up on coke. She blew her heart out, actually. She slipped on ice. If we have some ice, she slipped on ice, blew her heart out, and died right there from that. The shot she fired, we go, "Where'd it go?" And it hit the Parkway sign about 14 inches from my head and ricocheted into the street. There's a nick in this Parkway sign, and they found the spent round in the street. And, you die from an aimed round or an unnamed, a round that's not aimed at you. And I'm like, holy crap. So that was close. So, at the time, I'm 1988, 25 years old. God, a lot's happened in the last year here. I went into HR the next morning. I waited for him to open up. That 401 account, a 457 account, I want to open that up. And they're like, "Oh, okay." So every so often with some critical incident happening, shots fired call or whatever, I start maxing that thing out, but all because of that lady on Blodgett. I got a house in Michigan now, thanks to her, but, God, how close it came,
So has there ever been an incident that you've been on and you took a particular course of action or didn't,
mm-hmm.
and after the fact you're like, "Oh, I could have handled that so much differently and had such a better result"?
Yeah, there's always incidents like how you talk to people. That's the first thing that would come to mind for me is like, sometimes your interaction with people just in the day-to-day, you deal with so many people every day, all the time, various types of situations. And sometimes you don't do it great. I'd like to take some of them back. Or maybe I left the impression with them that I was an asshole, right? Not too often, but often enough I remember that I did. If I could go back to that case on Vennard where that man shot himself, I definitely would have waited for someone to get there. I would not have made that approach upstairs. I definitely had tunnel vision on that particular one, and I'd let that get the best of me. I would have waited for someone else to go up there, especially after I smelled gunpowder. The weapon had been discharged. Going up there wasn't the smartest thing to do.
So that's an operational perspective. Now, what about an administrative perspective? Whether how you interacted with your bosses or maybe a subordinate?
Yeah, I love-hate relationship, and I think a lot of guys go through that. You get wrapped up in the what happens inside the 4 walls of the police department, and I think a lot of stress that most police officers, I know for me, didn't come from my stuff on the road or the cases on our SWAT incidents. Those are expected stress. That was going to come. The stress that came inside the 4 walls of the police department through policies you didn't care for, interactions with supervisors who you didn't get along with, or they didn't get along with you, or you felt they were unfairly judging you. That does happen. Maybe a little too much on verbalizing my displeasure. I'd like to go back and take that back because you realize, it's really not going to change anything. You got to change a little bit at a time. And I realized later in my career going, change you and you can change your environment. And so I did more on working on myself instead of trying to change the department the way I wanted it. I just changed myself to work within the department the way I chose to work here, right? And these guys are in charge and they're the ones that are setting the tone. You can go against it, and it's just going to be aggravation. So if I could go back on that, that was the part, the interaction with people you worked with. You know, I'm saying you always have that one or two things. You just go, I could have done that better. You know, I could have reacted to that evaluation. I got a little better. You know.
So looking back over your career, what are some of your best memories?
Oh gosh, the guys I work with. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with your frustrations too. But you know, the friendships you make in this profession are profound. You know, you may not see the guy all the time, but if you have a connection with them, it just sticks. And you go through things with people with administrative disagreements. You know, they're sharing the same burdens with you. Calls on the street, you know, just great friendships with that. Traveling, I had the opportunity on behalf of the department as a detective to travel a good portion of the country on investigations I was working. And, you know, you remember the case you're working, but it was who you were with when you were doing it, you know. I remember we went to South Carolina for something, and the first thing Dave wanted to do was find out if they had a minor league baseball team. And it still sticks to me, where's the best restaurant, you know. And we were in Seattle and this other one, and we're like, how do we go up in the Spear? Let's go do this. You know, I know we're here to do this, but that was memorable. Those things. So it's the people, really.
So was there anyone, and maybe not necessarily in the Downers Grove Police Department, but through the course of your career that you considered to be a mentor, and maybe they didn't realize it, or maybe it was just someone that you wanted to emulate?
Yeah. I would say, I learned later, some course I was at, they said, you know, your first FTO, a lot of recruits, a lot of rookies will emulate them throughout their career to become a little bit of mini-me of that person. And it's certainly true in my case with Dan Harder from Forest Park PD. He instilled in me such I don't want to say a common sense of approach to police work to, we're the police and act like the police. And that's stuck with me my whole career, his methods he taught me. My biggest mentor, though, whether he knows it or not, was a lieutenant I had when we were in TAC unit, and I was in investigations. He went on to be the chief of police in Lombard, was Ray Byrne. You watch the Band of Brothers and you see Dick Winters. Everybody sees Dick Winters. I see Ray Byrne. Ray was the best supervisor I have ever worked for in any capacity. His compassion, his knowledge, his smarts, his fairness, it just reeked from the man. And he taught you too. And so I firmly believe my career succeeded because of Ray. When I was in the TAC unit, helped start the TAC unit in 1992. It was in that until I left it in 94. And, the detective spot opened up. And, I'll be a detective. Should be. I was a TAC guy, TAC investigations. I'm pretty sharp. Maybe I'll get it. So I put in for Dix. I don't even make the list. I talk about a wake-up moment. And, it's a typical don't see the forest through the trees, and looking at the list going, all the guys on it are pretty good guys. They deserve to be in there, right? And so I see Ray, and instead of, pounding, walking around, slamming doors and everything like this, I just see him and I go, what did I do wrong? He goes, you didn't do anything wrong. I go, what can I do better? He goes, well, just keep doing what you're doing. And I says, if I do some cases for you on the side, would that help? He goes, I go, the bullshit ones you don't want your guys getting tied up on. I go, I'll do the ones that could keep me in town. So I did that for like 3 years. And that's, the little thing, right? But Ray was that guy that just, you knew you were in good hands when Ray was working, right? He was smart, he'd been around the block, and his fairness just was incredible. But he held you to a standard. You had to live up to it. And you always felt, I don't want to disappoint Ray. All right? It's not the department, I don't want to disappoint Ray. You don't want to disappoint the department, obviously, but it was him. That was the guy. I owe everything to him.
What's the biggest change that you saw at the Downers Grove Police Department over the course of your career?
I think Downers Grove, like just about everybody else nationally, just started taking on too much. The role of police officers just started becoming encompassing of everything, from the mental health stuff. The domestic stuff changed considerably. We were pretty good. We still is a good department, good reputation for service-wise. We turn out a good product for police. I would consider we're a top 10% police department in the country. I'd put it up against just anybody. If you're in this region around here, I think you have to be. But it's the taking on too much. Every time there's a crisis situation like Rodney King, Ferguson, Missouri, I mean, it becomes everybody's problem. And everybody's trying to turn themselves into trying to fix that image. And that's, we got to back away from every time something happens over here, it doesn't mean that we're that,
What impact do you think the job had on your family?
I'd say it's pretty big. I mean, my wife put up with quite a bit for a period of time there when I was a detective on 2 SWAT teams. Also working in the association. I was traveling the country on behalf of the association as a detective. I was away a lot. So she had to carry the burden of everything. And the years leading up to that, I was on the afternoon shift. So, working 3 to 11, she's working herself. Right? She's a professional herself. So, she's everything is hers, right? And, you don't have weekends off a lot. So every function, she's got to go by herself with the kids. So that's a big thing schedule-wise. Plus, she, works in the police environment herself, has an understanding of it. And, I remember in 2002, we had another shooting, and it was a negotiated thing, and I got done with it. And I got home, and as I'm pulling up, there's a car in front, and it's my friend's car. I go, what are they doing here? And I walk in, and my wife was not having a nervous breakdown, but she was really upset, thinking, here we go again. It's, another one of these things, And, you work through that. My kids, cops' kids can go one of 2 ways. They're really good, or not so great, right? And it's a hard balance because you're always holding them to a standard that other kids just aren't held to. They're just not. And, every time something would happen, I'd make an arrest, be in the booking room with some kid for something. Of course, the phone ringing home from me in the booking room going, hey, if I ever hear you in the store stealing something, I'm going to, I'd project all that onto them. And it wasn't fair to them at all. Especially that period of time when they're learning how to drive. I mean, it was easier for me to teach rookies how to drive a police car out of the academy than it was to teach my kids how to drive their car because I just overburdened them, right, with stuff. And so my daughter, she made a statement after I retired that has stuck with me. And it was about 2 years after, and we're at some function pattern. She goes, well, that's this Dave. And I go, what? She goes, that's Dad now. He's a different person. And that hurt. Because, I don't know, if I had advice for anybody to go check yourself at the door. And it's hard. It's really hard. In 2011, I was going home from day shift. And, I'm just wearing a t-shirt. I'm driving a pickup truck. Come up to an intersection about 2 miles from my house. And I just happened to glance down at the car next to me, and the guy's staring up at me, and he's all tatted up. He's got a couple piercings and teardrops underneath his left eye. And he's just looking, he's smirking at me. Whatever, right? And the light changes, and he takes off. And it's a 30-mile-per-hour zone. He's doing about 70. Well, good for you, buddy. I'm going home to cut my grass. Whatever. Your Woodridge's problem. And so I see him. He's still going way up there. So I just go along, turn onto my street, and I live on a U-straight sheep. So you come on one side, you can come right out. Kind of intentional when I bought the house. I wanted to see the street. A little bit paranoid, I get it. But, this is one day it paid off. When I turned onto my street, he was sitting on my garage. And he was sitting like this, looking down the street, waiting for me to come around the corner. And what the hell is this guy doing in my house? And I stopped my truck, and he slowly backed down my driveway and slowly drove up to me. And I'm like, motherfucker, you're not a good guy. So I drew my pistol out, and I threw it out the window. And I just was repeating this plate, going, you're at my house now. And doing the plate, whatever it was. And He looked up at me, he goes, like this, with a smirk, and then took off. And I'm like, what the just happened? Well, he made the left turn, so I knew maybe I had a chance to ram his car down here, so I hauled ass around, and he was gone. Because I was just going to just plow into him. I don't care who you are. I'm going to say, yeah, I lost my brakes. You know, what are you doing in my house? And so I get on the phone to my place. I says, run this plate, see what this is, get Bolingbroke to my house. And so Bolingbroke sends some cars over. They go, keep an eye on the house. I have no idea what this is all about, right? I was off on Saturday. Sunday I go to work, throw an email out there, everybody, hey, it's happened to me going home. It's this guy, Luis Vasquez. Don't know him from Adam, don't know anything about him. But didn't seem right, something's off. Later that night, get a phone call from our guy in the DA task force. Goes, David, Luis Vasquez, he's an enforcer for Latin Kings out of Stone Park. I just got done doing a trial for the head of the Latin Kings of Stone Park for a double homicide. Now this guy's at my house. Okay, it's a problem. So Monday morning, big powwow at the police department. My wife, we're off, home. Take an AR-15 with you, go home until we figure this out. And, you know, one thing about our profession, we come together rather quick when we're up against it. And I had every task force, every agency you can name to the federal government in my neighborhood for 3 days until they figure out where this guy's at and what he was all about. And in the meantime, I got to sit my kids down and go, you're not going anywhere, right? You're not going to school tomorrow. You're staying home. We're going to screw around at the house. But and they can see, you know, I got a rifle by the front door. I'm armed. I don't want to do this to these guys. They're not supposed to live this way. I'm the kind of guy who would go home and, you know, my neighbors think I'm a dentist. I'm not the cop. I don't walk around in my uniform. I go home, lock up my pistol, and, you know, I try and lowball it. And so I got to sit down with my children and go, you know, this is what happened. I don't know who this is. They're going to be figuring out. You're going to see a lot of things going on in the neighborhood for the next few days. And sure enough, you can see them. Guys are, you can tell, you know, there's an undercover guy sitting in someone's driveway down the street, you know. You know, long story short, it gets resolved a couple of days later. They take him into custody and they find out that, you know, they're trying to find a nexus between him and this double homicide and me. And of course, you know, they couldn't find a nexus in print, you know, and he made up some bullshit story about looking for some woman walking a dog, you know, and so none of it made any sense, anything. So, you know, I still carry his pictures on my telephone. I carry a file in my house on this guy. I'm armed more than I want to because of him, even now, these many years later. You know, it impacts you. You're just going, every time I come out of my garage, I got to look around. Did they decide we're going to come back and visit this? I mean, that guy was on death row until he was commuted to life in prison, and maybe he's still pissed off about it, you know. So, yeah, that was definitely that sort of thing. This, you know, like anybody, anytime something happened, you kind of project it onto your kids too. When you see you're arresting someone for something, or you hear one of your kids' friends are getting, you know, okay, you know, that's hard. Other people have to deal with that. We did. You know, my kids came through it great though, and I'm blessed for that.
Looking back on your career, do you have any regrets?
I would have to go back and I have to point to my own attitude on some things. I come back to that a lot because I put a lot of frustration on myself over things I couldn't control. And it had inside the four walls of the police department. You know, a lot of things gets, you know, I'd vocalize, you know, and I'm basically a results person. I want action taken. I want things done what I feel is the right way. I didn't overdo it to the point of, you know, don't talk to Franklin sort of thing, but, you know, I could have dealt with that better. I can go back to that, going to put a lot of pressure on myself for no reason. I was a union vice president too for a number of years, so I took on that and I negotiated, you know, contracts, several contracts. Matter of fact, you know, one of the first things I did, you know, if you go, one of the things you could regret and not do again, I would not have been a union negotiator in 1987 when I was a rookie, because we went to arbitration and I literally on the street for 2 months and some senior guys go, hey, we need you to do this. And next thing I know, I'm down in a law office in the city going over arbitration, and across the table is the chief giving me the death stare going, what are you doing here? You know, of course, I'm not computing going, this ain't a place for me, you know, 5 years from now, right? But not the new guy on probation, So I wish I could go back and change that,
So how'd you come to the decision that it was time to retire?
Well, the numbers were starting to add up. I was approaching 30 years in the business. 28 with Downers Grove was coming up in the calendar. And I was on a call one night with my guys, and they were doing a domestic, and it's this typical same situation. And I just had zero interest. I caught myself having zero interest, and that's a dangerous place to be. And we cleared the call. Everything's fine. I remember getting my car going, you better start looking at this because you're daydreaming on calls. You can't be doing that, You're just disconnecting yourself. And you can't do it for your guys. You can't do it because you should be engaged. And so my wife and I went to dinner and discussing it. And I go, here's the numbers. What do you think? And she's like, yeah, do it, And I remember pulling out of the restaurant parking lot. She goes, why are you crying? I go, I'm going to be home on Christmas. When I look back at my career, I think all of the years, I worked all of them, but 6 or 7, I was off. During detectives, I was fortunate, but other than that, I was working Christmas, Thanksgiving, like anybody else in our profession, right? And I go, well, I'm going to be home on weekends. I just couldn't comprehend. That hit me like a load of bricks off a truck. I go, I'm going to be off. I don't have a normal life. I spent 11 years on the afternoon shift, the crazy pager going off all the time, the middle of the night call outs and all that sort of stuff. The 12-hour shift was another factor. They had brought the 12-hour shifts in. I didn't adjust to that very well at all. Did not, I couldn't adjust to that midnight shift, even though I was a sergeant of shift and I enjoyed the heck out of it. It just was hard. I'm getting a little too old for this. Maybe it's time, the numbers work. Here we go. And that's what did it,
So we talked about some traumatic incidents that you were involved in. We talked about the impact that it's had on your family. Mm-hmm. And we talked about some of the frustration you had within the 4 walls of your organization.
Yeah, and I don't want to overplay that either. But you talk to just about anybody, everybody has that at some level or not in their police department. And I guess what I'm trying to convey is I certainly had that. I was more vocal than others about certain things. I wish I could have taken some of that back and not internalize so much and just go to work and keep your mouth shut and do your job. A couple people I admired greatly on the job that were very capable of doing that. And I wish I was more like them,
So the reason I bring that up is because I wanted to frame the next question of, even with all of that, do you miss the job?
Yeah, you do. And I don't mean like if they call it today, I'm going back. Okay, thanks. I did my time, but you become, if you do this job in any significant manner, it becomes a part of who you are. And I was fortunate enough that I can remember sitting in my interview to get hired by Downers Grove with the Police and Fire Board. And they asked the question, where do you envision yourself 10 years from now? And I said, being the best patrolman I can be in one of the zones here. That was my goal, right? And I didn't start thinking beyond, okay, I'll get some rank, take the specialty positions. None of that entered my mind when I first came into the business. And if I had known from sitting in that chair in that interview with the board that I would have been involved in so many things that just were not on the horizon. I never saw them coming. A national board with the FBI, traveling to California and Florida with that, advising crisis negotiators around the country on how to be better or critiquing incidents that they're in and helping them understand what they went through. Teaching and providing training for crisis negotiators within the state. Being an FTO for as long as I was and hopefully impacting people in a positive way for their careers, right? And some negative too. Some people had to be fired, and that was tough. I never thought I'd be that person. And, as a detective, being so involved in cases as deep as I did, I had, crime victims that I still think of. The one girl in this one abuse case I worked was one of the bravest individuals I've ever encountered in my life. And this girl didn't give up on herself in the face of her church being all over her, her family being all over her, her friends being up against her, and the media. and she never gave up, and she prevailed. And, you know, having been fortunate enough to be part of that, you know, it's hard to top it. It's hard to top it. I also feel very fortunate to be here. The day I left, I pulled up the stats on officers killed on duty, and I keep it in my wallet behind my retirement badge, and the number is 4,911. From October 17th till I left on January 20th in 2025, that's the many people who were killed on line of duty. And I felt fortunate not to be one of them, or not know someone who was. And I know a lot of people who are in this job who know people who have been killed on line of duty. A friend of ours, patrol officer in Chicago, a sergeant in Chicago, she's got a lot of people she knows. And I didn't have to experience that up close. So I was lucky to get out intact. You know, and I feel very fortunate with that. It's a big number. It's more than was killed in Iraq, I think. You know, someone said one time, or more in Afghanistan. That many police officers we lost. But you miss the people. You miss the interaction, you miss the joking around, you miss the self-deprecating humor that comes with, you know, a lot of us do with each other. And you just miss that. It's hard to top, you know.
So what are you doing now?
So now, currently I work for one of the state police narcotic task force called DUMEG, DuPage Metropolitan Enforcement Group. So I'm a staff employee with them. I hold the title of inspector, but I actually do investigative aid work where I work with their evidence, just part-time, keep myself engaged with that. When I left the job, when I came home, I remember the day I brought my box home. And I walked in with the box and I put everything away, and I didn't touch it. I didn't touch it all. I had volunteered to work at the USO at O'Hare Airport. So I spent 6 months doing that just to get my brain off of police work. I don't want to be that guy. I just don't want to be always about the police. So I go do that. My friend calls, very talented carpenter, calls and says, hey, I'm going to go out on my own. I want you to come with me and do it. So I start with him. And the man is an absolutely artist, excellent carpenter, well-known in the Chicagoland area. And so I spent almost 3 years with him on that. And then I get a phone call from the director of DUMEG saying, hey, what are you doing? And I started that, so that was in 2020. So I've been doing that since then, you know, and enjoying it. It's a different level when you're not having the responsibilities of case management and all that sort of thing. So, and at the age thing, all those guys are the age was when I, you know, was doing that sort of stuff. They're all in their 30s and very eager, and it's kind of neat to see, you know, very sharp, talented. A lot of sharp guys in our business now that, you know, would run circles around me if I was still on the job.
So do you have any advice, whether it's for the new officer or the officer looking at retiring?
Yeah, you know, the new guy that comes on or is still in testing process or maybe just got hired is, you know, go in with both eyes open. Know what you're getting into. Take the ride-alongs. Ask the questions. Find out about the department you're going to go work for. Is it really where you want to work? Are they financially stable as an agency? You know, what's the chances for advancement? That sort of thing. Know going in. Don't guess. And then have kind of a plan. I mean, don't be the guy who wants to put feathers in your cap. You know, I never cared for those guys who just want to feather their ball cap with the positions that they held. But if you're going to go for something, go for it intentionally with you know, you want to be an evidence technician, go be a good one, right? And want to be one, because it's dirty work and someone has to do it. And if you want to do that, go do it. I didn't, okay? The guys in the middle road, you know, you call those dead years from like 7 to like 11 years. You could hit ruts, and man, I hit that more than one time. You know, you just feel like you're spinning your wheels. Don't give up on yourself. And it's, you know, someone once said it's a marathon, not a sprint. So run a marathon, and don't give up on yourself because you don't know what's going to change. When I left the Tactical Investigations Unit, there was a period there where it looked like, oh man, I think I peaked. And then as I got around 1999, it just all changed. It just all changed. And some of that, I opened my own doors. I had a little helping hand, Rayburn. But you got to make things happen, too. You know, and for the retired guys, have a plan. There was a part when I retired going, you got to do something. You can't sit around. I can't sit still. It drives my wife nuts. But you got to have a plan, though, of what you're going to do in retirement. We're fortunate enough in our occupation, we get to retire a lot younger than most people. Hopefully healthy condition. Have a plan to do something to stay active. If it means being engaged in our community still, do so. But just never forget where you came from, because this is a unique profession. It just is. And you should carry with you a lot of pride in who you were, because you probably made a difference in people you never met just being on patrol. I sometimes wonder, and if you're a retired guy, how many times you might have just pushed your car around the beat or the zone you worked. You have no idea who you impacted just by driving past them, just by being there. The store you walked into, you know what I mean? The unknowns, and there's probably thousands. You just don't know it.
Dave, thank you for sharing your story.
Chief, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you taking the time.